Yeah, just topics on the lines of obviously people are going back to work now. And I know from my point of view and my partner's point of view, to be honest, the impact of actually going back into an office after 14 months of working from home can bring on its own anxieties in itself. So for myself, obviously I'm lucky that I'm still working from home and I don't have to worry about it. But I know people that have been getting pretty anxious about the prospect of getting back into that new routine. So getting up early again, having to interact with people that they haven't seen for best part of 14 months is quite a stress on people. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that. Have you experienced anything from your side? Are you obviously, Ed, are you still working from home?
Yeah, I do a bit of both. I'm quite lucky, really. Because we have our warehouse facility, we've never really we've shut our offices, but we've never actually shut the business, if that makes sense. So there's always been a building for us to go into. However, we have obviously told people to work from home. The very nature of my job, I've been able to have the best of both worlds. If you look at that, I can still travel to the office. It's a requirement of my job. I need to be there every now and again. So I've had the flexibility of doing both from the very get-go, really. From when we all panicked at the start of this time last year, whenever it was, and everything, the whole world shut down. I was still traveling to the office, albeit with a lot less traffic, which was nice. I've been me and three lorries on the motorway at some point, which was a bit weird. But there are people at our place who say have not stepped foot in the office for 12 months or so, and I absolutely understand their anxiety levels of having to go back. I was talking to one of our girls this morning who's gone back into office for a first time since she only started with us recently. She's an apprentice, and she's been at home. It's been really strange for her because she's never known a real world within our office, because she's come on as an apprentice just as we went into lockdown. And she has had to adapt to working at home, because I think if you've never worked from home before,
Yeah.
it's a different environment to work. You've got to have a very different mindset, I think, to sit at home, to get yourself out of bed, to put your laptop on, to not just say, I'll just watch the telly and just one monitor my emails, or I'm just going to pop down the shop and get so and so, because you've got the ability to do that. So you've got to have that mindset. So I think there was the big thing of adapting to that. And I think the whole world, or the whole working world, was just starting to get used to that, starting to get used to their own environment, but struggling with the isolation of things. So then all of a sudden they've got to come back out of that and almost go back to where we were 18 months ago, when the world before this pandemic took over. And you constantly find yourself, I think, having to make adaptations to how life is going to be, and trying to foresee what the future is going to be like. Because we're saying to people, okay, you've got to come out and we're going to go back to the office and so and so. We haven't set the date yet, obviously we want to get along with government guidelines, but you can almost hear now the anxiety levels of people starting to think, well, I don't know if I want to go back. I don't know if I want to be in an open office of, I've been to your offices, Amy. It's, they're small environments and you are close to people. And we've tried to do our best through the whole pandemic to make it COVID secure. But there's always the thoughts in certain people's minds, I think. And not everybody's the same. Some people can't wait to come back. But there are certainly people who have really been spooked by this, understandably so, that have now got to start to adjust to coming back to it. And I think, it is going to be a big thing for people. I think we all have to respect that. Whether you've got your own personal views on it, I think is a different thing, but we have to respect how other people feel. There's a lot of the way the media have dealt with things and the way other things, and I think people have been scared into their own houses, and we have to respect that. We're all different. I'm guessing all four of us around this screen now have all got different opinions on COVID, on lockdowns, on everything that's been thrust upon us. But we have to put that aside, I think, at times, and respect what people's own feelings and thoughts are, because it's the same as mental health. This is no different to a mental health. Anxiety is part of that as well. So you can't see someone suffering mental health, but you have to respect their feelings. I think that's important.
I think it's not necessarily about a black and white issue as well, is it? Because I know, from our point of view as a small team, we've all been saying on our regular kind of Teams calls recently, we're looking forward to getting back to having some face-to-face meetings, and that breaking that isolation that you talked about, Ed. And we're quite a resilient bunch as well. It would be my kind of view of our team. yeah, when we kind of did finally have our first get together, which was a walk-in meeting a few weeks ago, we were all saying actually we've all felt a little bit funny before the before the meeting. There was a kind of a pang of anxiety, even though it was something that we were looking forward to. It's a step out of what has become the new normal, and people's mindset is going to have to be go through some adaptation, and it's a kind of a reverting to whatever the future normal is.
Yeah.
We have certain individuals who have their own personal needs, and I think as an employer you have to be flexible and have to understand that first. So safety definitely comes first, but equally, people's own mental health and what their needs in terms of their family commitments has to come first, given the situation we've all been through. So what we've understood is that to be robust but safe, we have to communicate effectively. So what we do, we have regular one-to-one conversations and meetings with the staff. How are you feeling? What are you finding challenging? What can we do to further support you? And that is so key at this time.
Yeah. It's all about getting people talking, I think, isn't it? And getting them to be open. It's not easy to say to somebody, I'm a bit scared to go to office, because a lot of people will look at that and see it as a weakness. My wife, as an example, she has an autoimmune disorder, so she's been shielding since the get-go, and then she was out shielding, and she's just finishing shielding again. So she hasn't really left the house. She's a strong-willed person. She works within our industry of bathrooms and stuff, and it's been difficult for her. She hasn't been to her offices for I don't know how long. She doesn't really go out to the shop. She doesn't want to. She just can't. It's a life and death situation for her to a degree. But she's learnt to adapt. But like you say, I think what you said there, Simon, is really important, that you've got to try and encourage people to talk about how they feel, because you cannot mental illness is like being locked in a room with your own thoughts, isn't it? With no window and no door for them to escape. And I think if you do just say to people, come on, just be honest about it and don't judge them for it. It's down to employers and businesses to manage that transition. And I think that's the important thing. It's not just going to say, right, okay, on the 1st of July or the 1st of June, everybody's going to come back to the office. We're going to be at 8 o'clock or 8:30, and we're going to start work as normal. It's not going to work, because people are just going to go off on the sick. Whether you want it or not, or whether you agree with it, it's going to happen, because people aren't going to be able to adapt to that. It's got to be, I think, a staged process.
I think if you think the last year or so, the time away from offices has given us all time to think about how we can review when we come back to work how that workplace environment is for our staff members. And without going over old ground, we're very big on the environment that we work in. So we want people to come to work and feel relaxed. We want to have like an outside table and chairs in the sunshine. If they can get away from their PCs and sit and relax for an hour, we want them to do that. We've installed a shower here, so if you want to go for a run or want to cycle to work, they can feel fresh and clean, that kind of stuff, because that's important about people's mental well-being. So we do those things, and we do that for a reason, because if you prevent potential issues, then you're not going to have people off work with stress, and people going to come to work feeling it's a nice environment to be working in.
Yeah, and I think the environment. Sorry, I'm gone.
It feels like the pandemic, although it's been horrific, there is a bit of a silver lining in that it's forced people, in particular employers, to have these conversations, because I've never known it before. I've never known it be as prevalent as it is at the minute. There's a lot, particularly online, on social media, on LinkedIn. A lot of companies are having these conversations now around mental health, which I don't think would have happened 24 months ago. So there is a bit of silver lining from that point of view, and I think it's something that needs to definitely continue.
No, absolutely, and I think the point I was going to make before, we talk about the office environment, and we talk about the environments that we want these people to work in. We spent, believe it or not, just as lockdown came in last year, we just finished refurbing our offices. We spent hundreds of thousands of pounds making these beautiful offices, and redecorated new offices, all this sort of stuff, and it was beautiful. And then all of a sudden we went into lockdown. But you're still coming back to the same office. But we then, at the end of the first lockdown, spent thousands of pounds having glass screens to put up around everything, around everyone's screens, which are still there. A one-way system, which automatically gets people feeling anxious because they've walked into an environment where everyone's boarded up. Each individual desk has got, a 3-foot glass screen around it, and you've got yellow markers saying you can only walk one round an office, and that is going to have an impact on people as well, because it's not the beautiful office that they left 12 months ago. They're coming back into a controlled environment where, you're saying to people, you can't walk down there because it's a danger. Or almost done with it. Well, look, if I'm walking down there and I can't walk down there, what does that mean for me? What is the danger? And that's how some people are going to think, and it's, although it's a safe environment, I think it's a very different environment to what people left, and social distancing and all that as well.
I mean, Amy touched on perhaps a silver lining, I think was the word you used. Do you think there have been some upsides from the kind of shift towards home working? From my point of view, I've refound kind of a couple of hours a day, which I can kind of throw at other things. But I just wondered if you shared the view that there are some upsides as well as some risks to manage.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've always, throughout my working life, I've always either, because I came up through sort of like the tool side of things, so I was an engineer out on the road, etc., and then made the transition to an office environment. So I've always had the ability to be either able to work alone or work within an office environment. But I enjoy. I mean, I live in South Birmingham. Our offices are in Stafford, so for me, it's a 50-mile commute to the office there and back every day. So yes, I'm getting that time back. I do miss going to the office. My office is my happy place. I can sit. I've got all my stuff around me. I've got all my junk around me where I can tinker and do stuff like that. But I can absolutely understand, like you said, the silver lining that people have had the opportunity to work from home. But I don't think it's been easy. I think as we touched on before, if you've never worked in that situation before, if you've just always worked in office environments, then you almost be given a little bit of freedom, and I mean that in the most professional way. You're being trusted that you're going to get up at the time of day that you normally would, or maybe a little bit later because you're not traveling, but you're going to have your computer on at a certain time. You're going to sit at your computer for the 8 hours that you're paid to sit there. There's an element of trust, I think, that comes from an employer as well, that's going to happen. And there's always a bit of flexibility. I understand that, but absolutely, I think there is a silver lining. It's whether the business or businesses can adapt to have home working. There are certain roles, I think, within our company that they have struggled to do from home, because it's the nature of the job has always been a very office-based job, and I think to try and run that from, you've got a team of 10 people that are normally working on a bank of desks doing whatever task they do, to then have those 10 people living miles and miles apart trying to control everything via Teams or Zoom or whatever platform that people use is a challenge for a business as well. But yeah, I think there is absolutely a silver lining there for some people, and maybe some business to realise that they don't have to have the high cost of running a big office with all these people in there when they can work remotely.
I think, Tom, exactly what Ed said there. I think it very much depends on the job role. So what we found is that, if you're somebody that's involved in website development, for argument's sake, or media, you can very comfortably work from home and actually be more productive. But if you're on the sales element and you need to network and talk to your colleagues, sometimes within like minutes, rather than waiting for Zoom calls once or twice a day, you're much more effective actually in an office as long as you can do that safely. So it very much depends on the job role. But one thing that I have learned, if you are working from home, what you must always do is regularly agree some timed communication sessions where you can stop information. Even from a a wellness point of view, just so that we haven't forgotten about you.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think the other thing is that I certainly found that helped me through lockdown was there's the monotony in the office. We all wander around. You go and make a coffee, you go downstairs and talk to them. We have that interaction. When I'm at home, I sit at my desk. I might go downstairs and get a cup of coffee, but you don't have that. And I found walking within lockdown. Walking was a massive thing for me. I would never do it. I leave home at 6:15 every single morning to get to the office because that misses my traffic and whatever else. And I saw a lot of people around me were struggling. Not necessarily that I knew directly, but a lot of people were certainly in the plumbing and heating industry where I focused. There was a couple of suicides and people not being able to adapt. And I started walking, and then I started to raise money for mental health doing it. So I did a charity walk, which I raised £5,500 for in the end when I shut the Just Giving page last week. But I just walked for a whole month. So for the month of March, I just walked, and every single day I did a video, and I recorded myself walking with a little story, whether it be a happy story, a story about how I was struggling, a story about how I'd struggled in the past with mental health or straight other people. And the feedback that I got from that was immense. You know, the just having, I still get messages now, people saying, "Are you going to put a video up today?" Even though I finished walking at the end of May, people are still saying to me, "Are you going to do any more?" And I do maybe go on a weekend and do a little bit, but to know that you're helping people just by doing something so sad. And just for me, I was overweight. I still am overweight, but I got off my arse and I went and walked 175 miles in the month, and it helped me in my own mental health because it helped me clear my mind. It helps, you know, you feel better about yourself. And I think it's important to encourage people, if you are stuck at home, just find something that gets you. I don't particularly like cycling. I look like a plum on a razor blade when I get on a bike, you know what I mean? So I have to sort of, especially in Lycra, it's not the best look, you know what I mean? It puts the drivers off. So I've always liked walking. I live in a beautiful little village, and I just walked. And I think it's important that people stay active because, you know, a healthy body promotes a healthy mind, and we don't all want to be sat at home. And walking is relatively safe. You can control the space that you're in. You can control the environment that you're in. You control how many people you see. I mean, I'm not saying go and walk through in the middle of Birmingham because you're probably going to bump into more people that you want.
Yeah.
But you can control walking around the streets. If someone comes towards you, don't feel comfortable, cross the road. That's all I did. You know, and I think getting out there, getting some fresh air, change of scenery, you know, it's very important to start doing things like that, I think.
And we hosted Ed way back in December 2019. We believe one of the first KBB wellness events. I think Tom, you attended that.
Yeah.
Wow.
25, 30 retailers in a space, and that's
Yeah.
the past that you can't do.
Yeah. What does that mean anymore? Can't get people together.
It was very refreshing at the time. We didn't know it then, did we? But you know, the reason that we decided we wanted to do that was because, you know, I went to a BMF event, Builders Merchant Federation, and I think it was Suzanne Skeet, Tom, she was presenting, and she mentioned that there was a well-known builders merchant in Bristol where somebody had one of the team members had hung themselves, and it wasn't necessarily that event itself, but it was everybody else in that branch by that circumstance.
Yeah.
And I think that just hit home really quickly, actually, and we decided we'd do our own events. And I think because of that, and because everyone's now talking about mental health, then you can then make the right adjustments yourself as a business owner. And I've made loads of adjustments in the last 18 months in particular that I believe is better for the welfare of the team because of those events, and because, as Amy said, because people now are talking about this.
Yeah. And I think that's the important thing, is to get people talking and to get, I think, organisations on board is huge. You know, I sat down with our top people at Altechnic and I said, look, you know, this is my own personal push, but, you know, I'd like to help the business to try and, you know, do something. And we now dual brand all our clothing with a mental health charity who are a clothing brand, so they supply our clothing, which is great. You know, we've done some other stuff around it. We've done a podcast series about focusing on mental health within the plumbing and heating industry, which we've had different people from different organisations come in and do talking from. I've actually got one this month with someone from a builders merchant who's going to come in and have a chat with us. And I think it's just about raising awareness and getting people to talk. I had a guy called me yesterday. I've spoke to him a few times, but he's got a young apprentice who he's had since the age of 15, you know, for a few years. And the guy tried to hang himself a couple of weeks ago. But the guy who rang me was beside himself because he didn't see it. He said, I didn't know, I didn't understand, I didn't see any change in him. And he was beating himself up about it. And I said, look, people hide mental health very, very well. And when we talk let's talk about mental ill health. Everybody's got mental health, but we talk about mental ill health here. And, you know, he was beside himself because I just didn't realise it. And he went to see him and he's got all these marks on his neck and everything. He said, I just don't know what to do. I should have seen it. He said, but people hide it really, really well. You know, if
they even understand what's going on there, which
exactly,
is another big challenge,
and sometimes they don't. You know, if I was to go and fall down my stairs now and break my leg, and then coming back upstairs and my tibia and fibula was sticking through my shin, you go, oh, that looks a bit sore. I bet you're in a bit of pain. But if I went downstairs and suffered anxiety and come back upstairs, you would never know. How would you tell? And I think that's the importance of raising people's awareness that it's okay to talk.
I think I'm right in saying, guys, that 1 in 4 of us suffer from mental health issues each year. That's the facts. And as you say, Eddie, it's so difficult to uncover if that's going on. And the only way you can do that, as I said before, is to have some regular communication sessions. And actually, one of the things I think some companies should consider is getting somebody in the team to be a specialist or a go-to. We've sent one of our staff on a mental health first aid course, for example, and we believe that's the right thing to do, where that encourages not necessarily go to the big boss man, but to go to somebody on the same level.
Yeah. Yeah, we have mental health first aid. I think we've got 4 or 5. But the problem that you have is that they don't always feel they can open up and talk to those people, if you know what I mean, because they're probably in certain roles in the organisation that you think you can do. And off the back of the stuff that I started doing back in February time, people come to me now because I am quite an open guy. I do wear my heart on my sleeve. I like a laugh and a joke. I think it helps people to relax. And some of the stories that people have told me from within our company where how they've struggled has shocked me, but they've felt the ability or the comfort and confidence to be able to come and say to me, look, Ed, I'm not feeling great. I'm feeling this, and this. What do you think it is? I felt this. And I look, I'm not trained in it. I'm not a mental health person, and I don't want to be. I've suffered my own mental health problems through the years. I can talk to people from experience, and I can tell them who to go and talk to. But they've made the first step of saying to somebody, I don't feel right. I don't know what it is, but I don't feel right. And I think that's massively important for any organisation, whether it be the BMA, whether it be your Simon, whether it be Ardentic or anybody else, is to just, you're not going to be judged if you just say, I don't quite feel right. Go and talk to somebody and let them help you through that, if you know what I mean.
I think that's the thing. I think it's difficult to go and have those conversations with people that you don't know whether they felt that way, whereas obviously they're coming to you because you've done a lot around it. They know that
Absolutely.
you've gone through it yourself, so it's a lot easier talking to somebody who's maybe experienced it themselves than going to somebody that you've no idea whether they've ever gone through it and they've just gone on the course and ticked a few boxes. I think
and everybody's trigger is different. What creates one person to feel anxiety is not the same sort of thing that would cause somebody else to feel anxiety. I had someone ring me the other day, sat on a supermarket car park in complete meltdown because they couldn't go into the supermarket, but they've been in 2 days before. Just some trigger had got her, and she could not get herself out of the car. She goes, I don't know what to do. So just go home. Just go home where you feel safe. Get your thoughts back and try. And everybody has a different trigger point. And I'm sure there's stuff that I've done in my life that's impacted somebody else's mental health. I think we've probably all done something indirectly that's impacted on it. And I think we have to be conscious. Look, we can't wrap people in cotton wool. It's not about that. Life is life, but I think what's very important is that we have an understanding of other people and how other people's feelings can impact on their own mental health.
It's a great point you make there, and being personal, and this is for the right reasons. My mother took her own life when I was 11 years of age, so I experienced that as a young child actually. And what that taught me was that if there was people around when I was 11 years of age that would talk about this, or there was the right course of action, she may not have done that. I think what we're saying here, guys, is that prevention is definitely better than cure, isn't it? You can prevent this by talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a piece the other day about let's not let suicidal become suicide. Do you know what I mean? And there's a lot of things about, people. If someone says they're feeling suicidal, they become a burden. People don't want to talk to them but when they commit suicide, everyone there suddenly becomes, oh, it's really sad. I wish I would have known all this sort of stuff. And I think it's difficult. And so I'm absolutely massive respect to you for telling that story, but it's really difficult to understand unless you've been involved in it, I think, how it impacts on your life. And I think we all have to be a little bit understand. I think you've hit a really good point there. So I think years ago it was an unspoken about illness. It was around, but it was unspoken about. You weren't allowed to suffer with mental health, especially as a man. It was, you couldn't do that. You had to go down the coal pines and, you come back up black and blue, go to the pub with the lads and, everything else. And then as I was going through it 15 odd years ago, it became easy to talk about because it was a little bit more in the headlines and it was becoming more acceptable and I think more understood. And I think it's going through phases, and I mean this in the nicest possible way. But I think some people use it to their advantage now, and I hate to say that because of the work that I'm trying to do. But it can almost dilute the message that we're trying to get across of real people. You see it yourself within many organisations. Somebody gets sat down and they have a conversation with a boss that they don't particularly like. You can guarantee within 2 days they'll have a doctor's note going off on the sick because they've got depression or whatever. And it's almost too easily used now. and I don't mean that in a negative way. What I'm trying to say is that we can't let that dilute the message that we're trying to put across about how people really suffer. You know, it's almost too easy to get depression, whatever else now, whereas before it was too difficult. We have to find a really happy medium, I think.
I think people are people, aren't they? And unfortunately, there will be people that take advantage, but we can't let that, as you say, allow us to stop having these conversations.
No,
and,
but you also say you can't stop it. You cannot say to somebody, just because you're 22 years of age, you can't have mental health problems. It doesn't work that way. But you know when someone's really suffering, and I'll say that from my own experience. You know when someone, someone's,
Talking about age there, Ed, I mean, we've got staff here who've got very young children, and actually some very young children are having some significant issues during this lockdown period, which has been where they're not seeing their friends, they can't play, or they couldn't play on a child's playground, for example. And then why can't I see my next door neighbour? I used to go and play when I can't play. Why can't I do that? And there's been lots of anecdotal things that we've heard the last 6 months in particular, where it's really affected young children, and that's not on about either.
No, my son's 11, and he's struggling at the moment with, I don't know whether it's anxiety, whether it's, we have a different generation of children now. When I was a kid, I'd go outside, even if my mates were around, I'd have a tennis ball, I'd have a football, I'd be throwing up a wall, I'd be kicking up a wall. I'd go outside at 8 o'clock in the morning and come back at 8 o'clock at night. I'd be filthy. My mum would give me a kicking for being dirty and not coming out for my lunch or whatever. But I went out. My son now is dog's angry. my son now gets up in the morning. He's fixated with going on his computer. They don't see whether they can see friends or not. They spend most of their time playing Fortnite or these other sort of games. But I personally have seen how that's impacted on him. He sits there in tears. He sits there shaking. And that's something I'm trying to go through at the minute. Is manage him, and he has opened up to me. He doesn't understand mental health. He hears me talking about it. He sees all the stuff that I do, and he says, "Oh, Dad, I'm worried that I'm suffering mental health." And I said, "Well, if you are, it's okay. We can get you through it. You just have to talk about, to me, what you're feeling." And that goes for whether it's a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 20-year-old, 30. Everybody has a judgment or their own perspective on how they feel. And I think it's important that we listen to them and we just try and guide them. I don't think he's suffering with depression. He's just in a weird place, isn't he? And I think someone, you've hit the nail on the head. No interaction with school, no interaction, no routine. He was getting up at 11 o'clock, not having anything to eat till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd have to drag him into the shower or hose him down outside as best I could to get any form of personal hygiene into him. But going back to school has been good for him. But there was an anxiety level around that as well. So it's.
I think there's going to be long-term impacts on a lot of people. I don't think that everything reopening and going back to normal is going to solve issues that have been created over the last 12 months. This is going to have long-term impacts on a lot of people, which is why I think it's important. Employers in particular need to focus on well-being now as well. I think it needs to be a really big part of recruitment from your side, Simon. When people are looking for new staff, I think they need to highlight what they offer in terms of well-being and what support they can offer, because like Ed says, you don't know who's going through what, you don't know what mental state somebody's in. So it's important, particularly from somewhere that you spend the majority of your day, that there's some form of support there for you.
Yeah.
Great, it's a great point. I put a post out last week on social media, Amy, that said if the employer you're going to an interview with doesn't mention what wellness adjustments are made in their work environment, then you need to ask the question.
Definitely, yeah. So we have a mental health webinar coming up on the 11th of May, which is in the middle of Mental Health Awareness Week. And we're going to be obviously discussing what sort of things employers can do, what advice and help is out there, extending the role of wellbeing initiatives, particularly due to COVID and post-COVID when things start opening back up again, and just tips and advice on how you can connect with people within your business. Like Ed says, there's a lot of people now that are having mental health training, but that doesn't mean that they're the only people that you can go and talk to. If there's somebody else within the business that you feel more comfortable with, you just got to go and talk to them. Don't feel like you have to go down those channels. So I would urge anyone who's watching this video and anyone within the association to take part in that webinar on the 11th. and I'll pop a link in at the bottom of this video so everybody has details for it. But I just want to say thank you all for taking part this morning. Really appreciate it. It's a really good chat again.
No problem at all.
And hopefully we can get another one in the diary and do this again once everything's opened up and see where everybody's at.
Maybe we could do it at a pub table at some point. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? I'd enjoy that. No, thank you, Amy. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time.
Cheers.
Thanks, Amy.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.